How's it going, my truant people? Dr. Slacking, the Slacking Doctor, back with another Draft League review on what I think will have been back-to-back days. I don't know the exact upload schedule for these yet, but you're probably seeing this the day after you saw the Mandibuzz video, or at least in the same week that you saw the Mandibuzz video. So, if you didn't check that out, I did a Draft League review of Mandibuzz and how I feel about that Pokemon in the Draft League format, how I felt about it on the EWT I drafted, the sets I used, etc, etc. Well, I kind of wanted to tie that into something, and I touched upon it in that video. I decided to do a Draft League review, not of the individual Pokemon, but of the whole draft, of the EWT draft, because I think it's a phenomenal example of how not to draft. And I know that might sound weird, because I drafted it, but it wasn't a good team. It wasn't a good team at all. And during the season, I complained repeatedly that I thought it was a bad team. And then I would say things like, oh, a poor workman blames his tools. I don't want to bitch about the team. I need to get results. And I think that is true. I think that I should have played better. I think that I played poorly during the season. So, full, openness, this is not an excuse. This is by no means an excuse. The EWT season for me is well and truly over now. But I wanted to do this because I felt like there is so much to be gleaned from this for Draft League players that are just starting, but even the most experienced Draft League players, I think, can learn something from this. I've been playing the format myself for a few years now. I'm a famously bad drafter. I often draft not great teams and then panic trade during the season. So this is just a good piece of analysis, I think, that can benefit all the kind of skill levels and experience levels in the Draft League format. So I want to talk about this team, and you can see I'm going to have to look over here because the team's over here for me. On the team we have Terrakion, Mandibuzz, Araquanid, Whimsicott, Copperajah, Toxtricity, Claydol, a Quillfish that was traded for a Cloyster, Rapidash that was traded in for the Charizard that you see, and then lastly regular Rotom. So on this team there's only really two Pokemon that I would say are bad, and only one of those I would really say is bad. The worst one being Claydol. I think Claydol is virtually useless. I wouldn't ever advise anyone to draft it. Maybe I should do a Draft League review on Claydol and how bad I think it is, because recently I've only really done Pokemon that I thought were decent or good. Maybe it's time I did one on a bad Pokemon. Let me know if you'd like to see me review Claydol. And the other one being Charizard. Charizard I think has potential. I don't think Charizard's bad. I've seen my friend Dean use it, Arctic Foss use it well, so I believe that Charizard has potential. But again, it's not a great mon by any stretch. You can see the points values. Claydol was the cheapest, and then Charizard and Rotom. Rotom I think is fine. I don't think it's sensationally good, but it's fine. Rotom can do a job on a team. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it's okay. So, why would a draft where most types are kind of covered, right? I have a grounded poison type in Quillfish. Some of this stuff's going to be fairly basic, some of you, but I'm going to touch on it briefly for those of you that it isn't. Why do you want a grounded poison type? Well, T-Spikes are soaked up by grounded poison types, so you don't have to click defog, spin, whatever. It's just a good way of, one, stopping T-Spikes going up against you, toxic spikes, and also another good way of getting them down when they're up against you. So most drafts will look, when they can, to have a grounded poison type. Well, I have that covered in Quillfish and Toxtricity. I have good wall breakers in Toxtricity and Terrakion, as well as Copperajah and Araquanid, so there's plenty of like firepower there. Admittedly, they're all mostly physical, but there's still some firepower and some good breakers there. Charizard, Rapidash too. Decent speed tiers up to the 108 speed tier of Terrakion. Okay, I don't have anything super fast on this draft, but it was a restricted Dex Wi-Fi pre-DLC format, so there weren't a lot of super fast things to choose from. It kind of went your 108s with Keldeo, Terrakion and those mons. Then you kind of had a bit of a jump back then to the likes of Dragapult and Zeraora being super fast, and most teams struggled in that speed gap. I actually have Whimsicott as well at 116, sorry. So actually my speed tiers are pretty good up to 116. So not too much trouble there. So why is this a bad team? Why would a team, defog, I've got covered by Rotom, spin with Claydol, defog technically with Charizard when I had that, defog with Whimsicott, defog with Mandibuzz. I've got spikes on Quillfish, I've got stealth rocks on Copperajah, Terrakion and Claydol. I've got webs on Araquanid. I've got like every hazard, every form of hazard removal, every speed tier, every type, fairy type, steel type. I've got everything you could really look for, I don't have a good dragon type. Maybe if you were looking for a fairy dragon steel core, that's where I'm lacking. But for the most part, I have pretty much every type covered. So why did this end up being a bad draft? Why did this draft struggle? It isn't enough to draft all of the types, or all of the niches, or all of the utilities and roles that you might want on a draft, if they don't have good synergy. So I just briefly spoke about wall breakers, and I spoke about them being physical. Well, let's dive into the stats a little bit more. If you look here at Terrakion, 129 attack, 72 special attack. Araquanid, 70 attack, but with Water Bubble, 2 times power for moves like Liquidation, only 50 attack. Really, you're going to be wanting to use Liquidation in most cases. Then Copperaja, 130 attack, 80 special attack, maybe coverage move, it's viable, but... then when I added more wall breaking potential in Cloister, sometimes a mixed set can work on Cloister, which is one of the things I tried to patch with the team, but I never brought a mixed set in the end. Because you want to, with Cloister, you want to abuse Skill Link and your physical moves. Rapidash, 100 attack, again 80 special attack, maybe for a coverage move. So suddenly all of my kind of strong mons, barring here Toxtricity, are physical. That isn't really great for a team because it means that when you're prepping for me, you bring your check to Toxtricity, maybe it's, I don't know, a Hippowdon. You bring your Hippowdon fully Spadef. Everything else on your team can be Fizz-Def. I mean, if you're bringing a Hippowdon, you probably want it to be Fizz-Def for Terrakion, but you get what I'm saying. Like, you bring your one Thundercat check Spadef, everything else can run Fizz-Def, because it doesn't really matter. If you can check Toxtricity, you've checked my whole special offense. Now, the few games that I managed to free up Whimsicott into like a Pixie Plate offensive role, I did so much better. I think they're pretty much the only games I won, because this thing then allowed me some special offense that was really good. The big one being against, I believe it was Goki Gamer. I think it was that game. No, it wasn't. It was against Saiyan Salamander, when Whimsicott just went in because I brought a Pixie Plate set. So it kind of shows you that I just limited myself in my offensive presence by having all of these physical attackers with no special attack. That's the first point. Why else do I talk about this team having no synergy? Well, I spoke in the Mandibuzz video about how Mandibuzz covered Terrakion's weaknesses, and that's very true. So the revenge killers to Terrakion, i.e. your fighting types, your water types, your psychic types, most of those, your ground types, are covered by Mandibuzz. So, alright, you want to bring out your Scarf Excadrill to revenge my banded Terrakion. Fine, click Scarf Earthquake and I'll go into Mandibuzz. That logic works, but it's not bad for team composition. But what else does Terrakion need beyond just something to switch in its revenge killers? Well, that relies on Terrakion getting KOs, and it didn't get a massive amount of KOs. And why is that? Well, it needs its checks being worn down. For example, if your opponent's team has a Hippowdon, how do you pressure that Hippowdon so that eventually your Terrakion will break through it? You know, you could bring Air Balloon Terrakion or something so that you can break through it that way. Sure, you can get more creative with your team building, but sometimes your actual draft is going to need to support you in that way. Now, in my head, the main ground resist on main rock resist on a lot of teams, because you're going to want to click Stone Edge and Close Combat, right? So the main rock resist on a lot of teams is their ground type, is a bulky ground type. Sometimes a bulky fighting if they have something like Scrafty, but most of the time their rock resist is a bulky ground type. So I was thinking in my head, well, that's fine, because if they bring Fizz-Def for my Terrakion, I'll break them with a Specs Boom Burst from Toxtricity. But in practice, I found that much harder to pull off because teams either had Ghost types, or they had Steel types, or they had Rock types. And so clicking Boom Burst wasn't always as free as I wanted it to be. And quite often, people were more scared of the Boom Burst from Toxtricity than they were of the Overdrive, or the Sludge Wave, or the Volt Switch from Toxtricity. So they didn't actually use their ground types to check me. What I mean by that is some electric types would help break for Terrakion, but the problem is the most powerful move that Toxtricity has access to isn't its stab, so people don't use ground types to check it. So here we have where on paper I'm saying in my head, well, offensive electric plus offensive rock isn't a bad pairing because they break for each other. Each one of them is walled by the same thing, and if you apply enough pressure on a small area, eventually you'll break through. Imagine it like a polar bear's paw. That's how I always think of it. They have big paws so they don't fall through the ice. Well, if we focus on one small weakness in the opponent's team, we can push through it and the water will come gushing through, right? So that's how it should play, but this doesn't work like that. If I had something like a Thundy Eye, right, and we were running like Nasty Plot, Grass Knot, something like that, right? People are either going to try to check Thundy Eye with their bulky electrics. Now, not many teams are going to have bulky electrics, or they're going to try and do it with their bulky grounds. Well, now, okay, maybe their Hippowdon Stone Edges and Oko's my Thunderous as I do 80% with a Grass Knot. That's fine. They now can't switch in on my Terrakion with their Hippowdon as long as I maintain the offensive pressure that makes sure that they never slack off with their Hippowdon again. And I like to play that way. I like to play offensive. So it was this kind of thing where in type synergy, it existed, but in practice, it really didn't. And it just, we suffered for it. And I know this is weird of me to put in the nicknames, but I like to have them there. I just like things to be as they were. I don't know. Anyway, so that's a way that it didn't really work out. What else does Terrakion not love? Well, Psychics and Fairies. So how can we pressure Psychics and Fairies? Well, I have two ways to beat Psychics and Fairies in Toxtricity and Copperaja. How do I bait in a Reuniclus and make Reuniclus take 60% so that it can no longer switch in on a Terrakion close combat? I don't. There's nothing else on my team. What else would Reuniclus switch in on? It doesn't need to switch in on my Cloyster. It doesn't need to switch in on my Copperaja. It doesn't resist those attacks. It doesn't need to switch in on my Psychic type being Claydol. If I had partnered Terrakion with something like a Sigilif, then maybe I could have calm-minded up with my Sigilif and clicked Shadow Ball into an opposing Reuniclus, and suddenly their bulky fighting resist was eradicated from the team. If they'd had a Clefable to check my Terrakion, maybe if I'd drafted, what else does Fairy resist? Dragon, right? Maybe if I drafted a Hydreigon alongside if I drafted Terrakion Hydreigon, which I believe was on the board, I believe I could have done that maybe. No, actually, I think Hydreigon was taken just before me. But I could have done another Dark type or another Dragon type, right? If I had taken Terrakion plus, say, Hydreigon, then suddenly your Clefable, are you bringing it Fizz Def to soak up close combats? In which case, my +2 Stone Edge is going to demolish your Clefable. Or are you going to bring it Spadef and then you're going to die to, or take 80 from my +2 Flash Cannon from my Hydreigon. So it's that kind of thing of where, you, like I'm saying, you're pushing on the thin ice, just waiting for a break, because once you do break, that's why we call them wall breakers, then your other mons can go crazy. And my team didn't have that synergy of breaking for each other. To some extent, Cloyster will break through bulky waters, which was good for Rapidash. But Rapidash isn't a premium offensive piece on this team. These two should not have been my primary offensive core. This is the mon that I took round 1. This is the mon that I spent all the points on. This is the mon that I drafted web support for, something to handle its revenge killers, tailwind support for, something to beat the bulky fairies and not just pressure them, that actually could switch in on them and maintain offensive pressure. Something else that could beat the defensive fairies, switch in on them and maintain offensive pressure. So I was drafting around this Pokemon, but I didn't give it an offensive partner. It didn't have a colleague to break for it, and it just fell flat because of that. So that's really one of the main reasons this team failed. Why else did this team fail? Well, whilst the speed tiers look good, and I had access to Sticky Web and Tailwind, very rarely did I ever pull that off. In fact, I found I didn't have room for Araquanid on a lot of my builds. I found that I was bringing Claydol to try and get rocks up, or to try and handle the electric types that were always coming for Mandibuzz. I found that Whimsicott was so pressured by dragon types because Copperaja isn't a good dragon resist. I found all these things meant that I was required to bring 1, 2, 3, and then if we want special wall breaking 4, if we want rocks and an electric immunity 5, I almost needed 5 Pokemon on every team, and one of those is Claydol. So I was really struggling to get the most out of my other mons like Copperaja to wall break, like Araquanid. And actually when we did the Copperaja analysis, if you haven't checked that out, go and watch the Copperaja analysis video. I found that I was bringing Copperaja with Stealth Rocks far too much, because if I was bringing Copperaja, I wasn't able to bring Claydol, or I didn't want to bring Claydol, and that's why I could bring Copperaja. But then I couldn't get the most out of Copperaja because nothing was getting rocks up for my team. Unless I was bringing an offensive Rocks Terrakion, in which case I probably wasn't bringing Sword Stance, Edge Quake, Close Combat. This is the set I wanted to run. I wanted this set more than likely every week I could get it, because I love this Terrakion set. I love playing Terrakion like this. I'm not too bothered about Scarf Terrakion. I don't like it. I'm not crazy about it. This is what I wanted to be bringing, but I never could. I never could, because I was finding that, well, I could, but I found that I had to bring something like Claydol to do that. So if I drafted this team again, I would do it very differently. And I'm going to upload a partner video to this where me and I believe Strumpf was going to join me for it. We're going to go through the EWT tiers. He didn't even know this yet. He's just agreed to record something with me. We're going to go through the EWT tiers, starting with a round 1 Terrakion in the pick that I picked in. And then we're going to create a draft plan around that to show you guys what a good draft in this exact format around Terrakion would have looked like. I think that could be really useful. So this is kind of the base analysis of this team. I'm not going to go into the flaws of each individual Pokemon. I had some good things about this team. I had good momentum to get into Terrakion. That's fine. I had Teleport on this. I had Volt Switch on this. Like, I had good things like that. I had good setup with Shell Smash Cloyster, with Swords Dance Rapidash, with Swords Dance Terrakion. Like, I had options. I definitely had options on this team. But they just didn't mesh well together, because the idea of getting slow momentum into Terrakion is that its checks will be worn down. But if it has to break its own checks, what you'll find is the game against Frosted is a phenomenal example, where I had to play a little bit out of my mind in that game. I think that early game was one of the best games I've played on the channel in a while. I was making all these doubles, predicting the Rotom to keep offensive pressure up with Terrakion. Why did I need to do that? Why did I need to play so aggressively? Because Terrakion had to beat its own counters, and even after it beat its own counters, it then had to go and try and sweep or continue breaking. I couldn't sacrifice Terrakion for another Pokemon to go through that hole it had just broken. It had to break the hole and then be the water coming through, and that was such a problem for this team across all of these Pokemon. All of these Pokemon were really just breaking for themselves, apart from these two later in the season, and these two aren't premium threats. They're hard to pull off. It's not often you get a Shell Smash or Cloyster in Draft Leagues. People prep for it like crazy. It's not often Rapidash gets to do too much, because it's at the end of the day a very cheap, low tier Pokemon. So yeah, this team was a bad team with good Pokemon on it, and that's what I'm trying to stress here, is that don't just think because you've drafted good Pokemon you have good synergy or you have a good draft, because you might not. Next time, Eric and I are going to go through what a good draft looked like. Now, if my upload schedule is what I think, you guys are about to see the date today when I'm recording this. I've been recording a lot today. So let's see, so we'll have the Mandibuzz video up on the 29th. I believe you should be watching this video on the 30th. We're going to have a Draft League Icons video on Wednesday. So on Thursday, if you aren't already subscribed, please consider subscribing so you don't miss it. On Thursday will be the part 2 to this video, where Stromful and I talk about how this team could have been and what I would have done differently to make this a good team. One last thing I'd like to say is, I touched on this in the Mandibuzz video. This team not only had a problem with its offensive core, it had a huge problem with its defensive core. I didn't go over that too much here because I probably went over that enough in yesterday's video, so if you haven't checked that out, check that out. But yeah, this team did need a better ground type to support Mandibuzz above anything else on the defensive side. So go check that out if you want to see the rest of the analysis on why this team failed, but I wanted to focus more on the offensive side this time. Regardless, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. It's a bit different. I'm trying new things. I'm experimenting with different video ideas, different formats. Let me know what you guys think. If you do like it, please remember to like the video. Actually hit that thumbs up button so that I know that you enjoy it, so that I know you want to see more content like this. We have a subscriber Discord link down in the description. Please do join that so that you can get in contact with me and the rest of the Truant people. We can share ideas. We can talk about draft leagues and other things. So yeah, I'm going to end it there because I have a tendency to ramble on. Thank you so much for loafing around with me, and I'll catch you again next time.